Well, welcome everybody. As we wait for everybody to filter in here, we'll take a couple of minutes just to do that. We're excited that you're with us today as we introduce you to a brand new partnership between Livingston High School and specifically the MyCap program that's offered through College Aid Pro. So like I said, we'll give you just a couple of minutes here and then we'll get started. And by the way, this program is being recorded, so you'll be able to click on a link that we'll be sending out, as well as you'll be able to see the PowerPoint as well. So we'll include that, but we'll get started in just a minute here. But thanks for joining us.
Howdy, everybody. It's great to be talking to a bunch of Texans. I'm here in Houston.
Yes, sir.
Looks like a couple of you might get some one-on-one time today.
That's right. Yeah.
If you want, while we're waiting, if you want to throw what year your students are, if you're a parent with a college-bound student or a teacher or administrator, into the chat, we'd love to hear from you.
Well, I'll tell you what, let's get started here, Chuck, because I want to make sure we get maximum time. And in particular, we want to make sure we've got some time at the end also to really get you started on using this tool. So College Aid Pro's mission is very simple, as it says here, to end the student loan crisis by empowering families just like you to shop smarter for college. And let me take just a minute to introduce myself. My name is Dan Bissig. And my background, I was a financial planner for 25 years and then transitioned my practice over to focusing 100% on the college process. And that actually occurred 17 years ago, where I focus on helping families with every aspect of the college process, from college funding to picking careers and the colleges and the administration process as well, or the admissions process. But have been with College Aid Pro now for a little over a year, but have been using the software for almost over 4 years now. So that's my story. Chuck, how about you?
So I'm Chuck Bates. I live in Houston, Texas, and work as a financial advisor. I got into this a little bit different than Dan. I don't necessarily help with getting admitted to your college or test scores or essays. But 11 years ago, my wife and I were foster parents. We adopted a little boy out of foster care, and our first foster daughter came out of Livingston and the Conroe area. So super excited to see that. But in that process, we learned that anybody who spent time in CPS in Texas gets tuition waivers. And you still have to pay room and board and the fees and other stuff like that. But it got me thinking. I've got 2 kids of my own and I've got 3 nieces and nephews. If I didn't know that, what else don't I know about how to pay for college? And I spent about 5 years digging into it. I've been using the software for a little less than that, probably 3 or 4 years. And I've started working with Dan and College Aid Pro here in the last year. My background is in investments and finance. I've worked in that my whole career. So the risk management and the financial kind of responsibility really resonates with me, and that's why I love to do what I'm doing. So I'm excited to be here and be a resource for y'all.
Awesome. Thank you, Chuck. So folks, we're going to get you started just by diving into something that's real important. Where do we start with this whole conversation? And it starts very simply by understanding that we need to help you figure out whether or not you're getting a fair award from the colleges, and really helping to give you a tool that's going to interpret those offers correctly. And that tool is called the mycap.collegeaidpro.com tool. It's actually MyCap. And so what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be introducing you to the platform. We're going to show you a landing page at the end here that you're going to be able to click on and actually be able to get right into the system, where you've got the ability then to set up your account. It'll walk you through a number of things. I promise you it's going to be an exciting tool for you to use, but I want to be very clear about something. I believe that there's really three types of students and parents out there. There are those that are inactive, reactive, or proactive. Of course, we want you all to be as proactive as possible because what we're looking at here is the ability for you to utilize this tool so that at the end of the day, you've got a great set of colleges that you're considering, in addition to all the work that you're going to be doing through your school. So the most important thing about this is when you go to mycap.collegeaidpro.com, and again, you want to wait on it because we're going to give you the landing page. We're going to give you a specific landing page that you're going to go to. You're going to be using, though, this coupon code of Livingston 100. Again, Livingston 100. And that's going to give you access to the scholar level for absolutely free, no cost to you by doing that. And it's going to unlock a ton of options for you. So again, we'll be working on and talking you through that a little bit more in just a minute. Let's keep going here.
We see a class of 2024 in the chat, and it's going to be amazing, amazing resource for you. Oh, this is me, huh?
There you go, Chuck.
All right, so we are getting to the meat and the potatoes of kind of how to pay for college and what is financial aid. It's super confusing. You know, I've been doing this for several years now, and every year something new comes up that I've never had before. And we're just going to try and give you a basis to be informed and make informed decisions, and you know, hopefully get you off on the right foot. So, what is financial aid? Well, there's basically a discount to sticker price. It's a way to reduce the cost of college, whether that's to get better students that normally wouldn't come to the school, or to allow people who couldn't afford to come to the school to get in and create diversity around their university. There's a couple different types. One is need-based grants. That's based solely on a student and a family's financial profile. We'll talk pretty specifically about what goes into that, but it's things like income and assets and home equity. Then there's merit-based scholarships. So what do you excel at? Do you have really good grades, really good test scores? Are you an amazing band member or football player? Those are merit-based scholarships. And then finally, there's self-help, which are loans and work study. It's not free money. It's money you have to pay back, and you need to make sure you understand kind of the implications of those loans, how much work study you're going to get, and what that looks like in return on investment based on your first year salary and course of study once you finish college. So hope that clears it up. But there's three types: need-based grants, merit-based scholarships, and self-help. And most people's first question is, will I be eligible for financial aid? And that when they say that, they typically think of need-based aid. So there's a formula the government and most schools use to determine that, and it stands for cost of attendance, which is the sticker price. And it's not just tuition, it's room and board, there's travel components, books, other fees. It's basically the entire dollar amount you pay to attend a college. And then they use the expected family contribution or student aid index. If it wasn't already complicated enough, we're right in a transition period through something called the FAFSA Simplification Act, where EFC, the part that colleges and the government think you can afford, is changing its name, and in some cases, the way it's calculated, to the student aid index. So those terms will probably be used interchangeably for the next year or two. But they're essentially the same thing, and it's the expectation of what a family will contribute towards education. So cost of attendance minus your EFC or SAI equals need. And that is typically the amount that institutions will potentially help with or financially assist you with. And we'll get into exactly how that works with each school and the different types of schools here in a minute.
So, what do you need to know about this EFC or SAI number? Well, first of all, we need to know what kinds of items are considered in these calculations. The very first thing is the assets. One of the things that is a good side of this is that it does not include your retirement accounts. So it's not going to include a 401k plans, IRAs, Roths, 403bs if you work for a nonprofit, or simple IRAs, things like that. Those assets are protected. And as a matter of fact, moving forward on the federal system, they also do not count against you the contributions that you put into those accounts. Now, unfortunately, one thing that does not help you is debt. A lot of times families talk about this. They may say, hey, well, I've got a lot of home debt, auto debt, credit card debt. Unfortunately, they don't take that into consideration, although the home debt could reduce, of course, the equity position that you've got, which some of the schools do count. But the thing about this is debt is traditionally something that's just an expectation. Now, the next piece of the puzzle is what we refer to as the parent assets versus the student assets. And what you need to know about that is that parents' assets are counted at a different level than student assets. In fact, parents' assets, which would include things like checking, savings, money markets, CDs, double E savings bonds, in other words, anything that could be liquidated, those are counted from the federal system at 5.64%. When it comes to student assets, those assets are actually counted at 20%. So what do we mean by that? Well, if your son or daughter, for example, has money that's sitting in a checking account or a savings account or something like that, then you're absolutely going to be having those assets count at 20%. So if there's $10,000 sitting there, they've been a really good saver, that is going to be $2,000 worth of financial aid that they will not get. And oh, by the way, mom and dad, if you happen to have been able to save in 529 plans, those accounts do count, again, as a parent asset, not a child's asset. And then finally, how about the home value? Well, when we're talking about the home value, really what it comes into is understanding that some colleges do indeed count that house and the equity within it in the calculations. And oh, by the way, I should mention that an asset that you have could include rental properties. It could include, business valuations, all kinds of things that come into play moving forward. But our opinion about the house is that you should look at it if you had to do a quick sale on it, like a fire sale. And we suggest using the IRS quick sale value, which means a 15 to 20% discount could be expected if you had to get rid of that house very quickly. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah, and I'd encourage you to look for multiple sources to find the lowest value possible to start with before you take the 20% discount. So it could be Zillow, it could be your recent appraisal, it could be the Federal Housing Authority, any of those, whichever one is the lowest is probably where you want to start that process at.
Oh, and by the way, it is not what your county charges you or has as a tax rate of your house or tax value of your house. Sometimes people think that they can go to that much, much lower number like that. It's not that. You absolutely have to be using some kind of value on it. Okay, so the next piece of the puzzle is, what income do colleges consider? Well, that all comes down to understanding your taxes. And by the way, yesterday was tax day. So I think we can either all celebrate the fact that it's done or maybe you even took an extension, whatever it might be. But notice that they are using what's called prior tax year. What does that mean? That means, for example, with the family that's a 2024 graduate, that your student's tax return or the tax return is going to be the 2022, which is the one that was just completed, by the way. And they're going to use line 11 of your 1040. That's your adjusted gross income. In the case of the students, what they're going to do is the students can actually earn up to a little over $7,000 without any impact on financial aid. But once it crosses that amount, it's now 50 cents on the dollar against financial aid. So please keep that in mind. Income is one of those unique things, again, where they're looking at the 2 years before. Now, what if currently your situation does not look the same? In other words, maybe your income's less. If that is indeed the case, we want to make sure that you have the ability, which you do, to bring that kind of detail to the financial aid office so that they can take that into consideration. So just something to think about. We will be, by the way, in the future, giving presentations that will talk all about these types of things to really help you navigate your way through it.
Yeah, we always like to say, we want you to have all the information to paint yourself in the best light to get the most financial aid without being fraudulent, lying, or breaking the law. So there are some gray areas, and whatever you put on your financial aid applications, you have to be responsible for. But we're going to give you guidance and thoughts and impressions on things that have the biggest impact.
All right, Chuck, you want to do this?
Absolutely. So what if I don't qualify for need-based aid? Well, if you don't qualify for need-based aid, there's a lot of schools out there that give merit-based aid. There's two types, automatic and competitive. I live in Houston, and it's very hard to get into the, to UT and A&M if you're not in the top 6% of your class here in Texas. In Houston, a lot of the families I help are applying to schools like Alabama, which Alabama, Ole Miss, Arkansas, LSU, all of them to some extent have automatic scholarships, meaning if you know what your GPA and your test scores are, you can basically figure out what kind of discount to sticker price you're getting right off the bat. Merit, competitive is exactly that. It's a little bit more competitive. Scholarships that you may have heard of in this area are the Posse Scholarship, or there's a couple other ones where, it's a very intensive process. You have to write essays, you have to go through interviews, but the scholarships can be quite large, but they're competitive, and you're competing against a lot of other students. We need to know that, like, some schools are far more generous than others. And we need to know that some schools do not give merit aid at all. There's about 72 schools that meet 100% of need. And for the most part, they're not going to give merit scholarships. They're the most selective schools, and everybody who's going there is essentially valedictorian, almost perfect SAT and ACT scores. So it's pretty hard to differentiate between the merit. But if you have a lower family EFC, those are going to be some of the most cost-effective schools for you and your family. We also like to tell you to apply to competing schools. When I work with families here in Houston, I tell them to apply to between 10 and 13 schools at a minimum. And if you're going to apply to Baylor here in Texas, I'd say it might be worth it to apply to TCU or Austin College or Trinity in San Antonio. Some of those schools compete for students and might be more generous with their awards. You can use those other awards to appeal at your first choice school to get a lower total out-of-pocket cost. And then finally, it's going to be value schools. What are the schools that are good schools that are on the lower end of the tuition range? We always use James Madison in Virginia with a cost of attendance around $40,000. I think Purdue is another school kind of in the low to mid 40s that is a incredible school that you could think about. And there's a lot of them, and each family is going to have a unique situation. The things I would encourage you to think about are your GPA and test scores. And if you can find out if you fall into the top 25% of a test score or a GPA, it's going to make you a lot more attractive to merit aid. Dan, would you add anything on any of that? Anything I kind of glossed over?
Yeah, no, the only other thing I was going to say to you is don't forget, again, one of the big benefits of you having the MyCap program is the fact that we're going to help you identify the schools that are going to give you either the most merit aid or the most need-based aid. And so that's exactly what the software does. It's all based on you putting in accurate information from the beginning, and those details then will be translated into helping you totally see which schools are going to be the best value options for you and your family. And so I'm just super excited about you having this opportunity to use this tool, because it can very effectively take away all the mystery and really help your family.
I see a question that just came in. It says, do you help find schools that offer sports scholarships? That's not necessarily our expertise or area of specialty. We do have some experience as a group or as a collective unit, but it's certainly not kind of the primary focus. Dan, you have any opinions? I guess the one thing I would add is my daughter's a golfer. There's a organization, I can never remember if it's NASC.org or NCAS.org, but it's part of IMG Academy. And you can put a athletic profile on there. My daughter's a freshman. She's a reasonably good golfer. And she's got in the last year, probably 15 emails from schools that say, you are the type of student or golfer we recruit, and they're trying to generate interest from her. So there are things you can do, but sports scholarships are probably not the primary that you'll get out of MyCap.
Yeah, excellent.
And actually, since we have one junior in the class, I'm going to throw in one more thing. When it comes to the automatic scholarships, you can search, use the advanced search, and look for schools that are going to give you scholarships. And then you can go back and determine, hey, based on my SAT or ACT scores from my junior year, if I improve that a point or 2 or 3 points, does that potentially mean another $3, $5, $10,000 in merit aid? You know, a lot of those schools get more generous as you go up the test scores. And if you're starting in your junior year, going back to what Dan was saying about being proactive and really diving into the software and exploring it, you may be able to, you know, use Khan Academy or some test prep organization in your hometown, improve your scores 2 points, and that may save you, you know, $2,000, $4,000, $5,000 a year, and over 4 years you're looking at $20,000 in savings. So for you students and families that have 2024 graduates, now is the time to be proactive, not inactive.
Yeah, that's good stuff, Chuck.
And this one's mine now. So merit-based aid. Sorry, I get so excited about this, I get off topic. When you get merit-based aid, it typically comes from the Office of Admissions, not the Financial Aid Office. So a lot of times what will happen is you'll send in your application, and 2 or 3 weeks or 2 or 3 months later, depending on how quickly the school gets back to you, they'll say, you know, Gavin, we are excited to welcome you to the class of Alabama, and you've got the Presidential Scholarship for $12,000 a year for 4 years. So it's very exciting. It builds a emotional bond to hopefully get you to attend their university. It's an enticement for the student to attend, right? Like most people like to save money. They know college is expensive, and they want to give you just enough to get you to sign up. One really nice thing is it's typically for all 4 years. When you're applying for need-based aid, you're going to have to complete the FAFSA or the CSS profile every single year. And if your financial situation changes one direction or the other, it will likely impact the amount of aid you get. Sometimes you'll get more, sometimes you'll get less. So it's a process. It's not a single shot. Again, it's based on something you're skilled at. So whether it's good grades, good test scores, anything else, and you need to maintain those. Every school has a different awarding methodology. They look at things differently. Some schools value GPA over test scores. Some schools still value test scores over GPA. And you can kind of use the MyCap software to see that by only putting in a GPA or only putting in a test score, and your aid may, or your award may be different, or your outcome may be different. So something to think about. And then finally, you know, private colleges are generally the most generous with this. It runs the gamut. Some federal and FAFSA schools are becoming more generous, and you'll see that on a slide coming up, a couple examples. But in general, private schools are where you're going to look for the most merit-based aid. The next slide I was talking about. So I'm going to give Dan a chance to chime in here, but merit-based aid is a big deal. Alabama is the school I'm familiar with because so many kids that can't go to UT or A&M end up going there from Houston. They have a very explicit grid on their webpage. You can go look up your GPA and your test scores and know exactly how many dollars you're going to get. On the need-based side, you know, every school may meet a different percent of need. You know, if you have a lower EFC, it's great to find schools with 100% of need met. I actually just ran a report today, and there were 72 schools that meet 100% of need and 126 that meet 90% of need. But you need to keep that in, you need to make sure you understand that that is all relative, right? So let's just say the cost of attendance to go to Northwestern is $70,000. and your EFC is $65,000. That means you have $5,000 of need. They'll meet 100% of that $5,000, but you're still going to come out of pocket for approximately $65,000 in most cases. If your EFC is, you know, only 10,000, then, you know, your need is significantly higher, and they'll help with that need. So even though they meet 100% of need, depending on your EFC, it may or may not be a big number. So keep that in mind. Dan, anything you'd add about kind of Denison or Case Western? Those are closer to you, or any of the other need met schools?
Yeah, no, I mean, here's what I'm going to say to you. The bottom line on this whole process is that MyCap is going to give you, the transparency so that you know what your expected family contribution or your student aid index is. And it's also going to then help you when you're looking at these colleges, have a realistic idea of, okay, what do they expect me to pay and what can I expect to receive? And I think that to me is the best thing that you can have here, is because we want to help you make really good informed decisions. Don't assume that just because a school is 100% in need, just like Chuck was saying, that they're going to help you fill all of the cost of that school. Now they may, I mean, there are some opportunities out there where schools do give out full ride scholarships for, the top of the top students coming in, but they're few and far between, folks. You just need to know that. There are some programs out there, by the way, where colleges like what we're talking about here in the 100% of need met do indeed step up, whether that's through QuestBridge or like the Posse scholarships and things like that, right? Those opportunities do come in. Also, National Merit can come in. And so just make sure that you're doing your homework over the next year or two so that you really have a sense and use the software effectively to help you with that. I promise it really will.
Yeah, just to give you an example, if you put in Northwestern and Stanford, and they treat home equity very differently. So if you have a home that has a lot of home equity, Stanford's going to be, in most cases, substantially less expensive to attend than Northwestern because of the way they treat home equity, assuming you use all things equal. So, you need to find the schools that are the greatest fit for your unique family situation, whatever that combination of income, assets, grades, test scores is. So yeah, but I just saw the Northwestern logo and it made me think of a comparison I did for a Northwestern and a Stanford application just recently.
Yeah, that's great information. It's true, folks. And again, you'll be able to see that with the software. All right. So how do you apply for financial aid? Well, you need to know this. No one school is alike. What I mean by that is that there are some schools that require only the federal methodology, which is called the FAFSA, the Free Application for Federal Student Aid. And by the way, every college out there, with the exception of about 16, will require that form. But in addition to that, there's also colleges that require the CSS profile, and Chuck will be talking about that in just a minute for us.
And since we're talking to families from Texas, it's now a graduation requirement, at least in my students' school district, but I think it's statewide, where you have to complete the FAFSA or have a parental waiver to graduate. So keep that in mind. You'll probably be doing it whether you like it or not.
Yeah, so get ready. And by the way, that leads to something else we'll eventually talk about, which is, you have to create an ID and all that stuff, but we'll get there, we promise, in future sessions. Deadlines truly are paramount, although you need to know that there's a big change coming this year. And that is the fact that there were changes to the FAFSA. And in that particular case, in fact, we'll talk about it in a minute, but it looks like things are going to roll out in December, where they would traditionally roll out in October. And then also notice it's truly your responsibility. It's the responsibility of the student and the parent to meet those deadlines and to meet those requirements for all these colleges, because they're going to ask for it. I mean, they're going to absolutely expect. So moms and dads, please remind your students that they must open their emails. It's paramount, okay? It's important. That's the way the colleges communicate with students. Yes, they'll do some texting, but the reality is it's going to be an email. Which is why we want you to make sure that you use an email that is designated for the college information and that everybody can open up. In other words, maybe mom or dad, you guys put yourselves on that account too. Make sure you've got the username and password so that you can get in there, so that everybody's keeping up with it. Really, really important. The other thing is that you're going to go to the FAFSA website. So you can see that that's listed up top here. Again, remember, everyone's going to get a copy of this presentation and these slides. But you're going to be creating an FSA ID. The thing that's important about this FSA ID is that it's one for the student, and it's also one for the parent who's completing the financial aid form. Now, I bring that up to you because in the case of a divorced family, it's going to be the custodial parent, and that custodial parent is now determined as the one who provides the most financial benefit to the child. Okay. And so moving forward, that's the way that it's going to be. But here's what you need to know. This says it's accessible on October the 1st. The truth is, with this new FAFSA Simplification Act, it's being pushed back to December or sometime in December. Again, you're going to be using your 2022 base tax return to complete it. And actually, the program has what's called an IRS data retrieval tool, which is the ability to click a button, and then it will go ahead and input all of your information for you. That may or may not be the right decision for you, depending upon if there's been, income bumps that were like a one-time increase that occurred. And again, those are things that we're going to coach you through. So just keep that in mind, but there's nothing that says that right now you can't go ahead and set up your FSA IDs. And so I would encourage you to do that. The opportunity there is truly to be able to get that set up. Make sure whatever you do that you put your username and password someplace safe where you'll be able to remember it in the future, because the system also has a two-part authentication process now that they put in there to protect you. Okay.
And there is a question, as a parent, if I've created an account in the past for older siblings, do I create a new FAFSA account or use the older one?
The answer is no. You don't have to worry about creating a new one as long as it's truly an FSA ID. Just depends on the timing, but assuming that that you've done it within the last 5 years, you should be good to go.
Yeah, every student will need a unique one. Parents can use the same.
Yeah. So let me share with you 6 critical FAFSA mistakes that we see families make so that you don't do this. Okay. Number one, as I mentioned earlier, do not include retirement savings under the parent or student assets or investments. It happens all the time, folks. Somebody sees a question that talks about their net worth and they think, oh, well, that's going to include my retirement accounts. Well, that's not the case. So don't include it. Also, do not include home equity under the parent and savings investments. Again, we're talking the FAFSA here, the free application for federal student aid. I want to be very clear because it's different with what Chuck is going to talk about in a minute here, but home equity is not considered. Also, don't include 529 accounts under the student's savings and investments. Remember, I mentioned that those accounts are owned by the parents, and so they should be considered a parent asset. Really important that you know that. By the way, grandparent-owned 529 plans that maybe some families have do not show up at all anymore, which is a win-win. And so they won't even come into play on the FAFSA. Again, they will not show up. Also, don't miss an opportunity for the student to do the work study, which is a part-time job on campus. So go ahead and select yes to that question. It's not going to hurt you if in the end a student decides not to do that. So it's not an obligation. It's just that, if you want that opportunity of maybe having your student work as a information person at the, at the library or, some other place on campus, you need to have selected that because it's a first come, first served basis because it is considered a need-based policy until those positions are filled.
I swiped IDs at the rec center in Nebraska for 2 years.
Did you?
Yep.
Yeah, well, there you go. I was talking to someone the other day. I think their daughter was in charge of like signing people into the rec center. Yeah, doing something similar. So here's the other thing, and Chuck already mentioned this. Do not assume that your expected family contribution or the student aid index is what you're actually going to be expected to pay. He mentioned before that colleges do indeed kind of choose. I mean, if even a college that says they cover 100% of need may do, say, 60% of that in free money, which means that the other 40% is likely going to be in loans. And so, yes, they're officially covering 100% of need, but it may shock you. And don't forget, you're still expected to cover the amount, the expected family contribution or the student aid index amount that they've calculated for you. And then again, don't miss those deadlines.
Yeah, if you ever hear the term gapped in financial aid, it implies basically a shortage between need met and cost of attendance. So
yeah, definitely something that you don't want to discover in the spring of your student's senior year when you're scrambling because of the colleges that you apply to, thinking that you're going to get more money than you ultimately did. All right, so let's switch gears and switch over to the CSS profile. Chuck?
All right, so the CSS profile, not all that dissimilar from the FAFSA in terms of what it's trying to do. It's trying to assess your financial situation and determine how much aid a school should give you. But the thing I would say is if you're somebody who maybe
Sorry, my
likes
apologies.
to have a glass of wine or a cold beer, you might only need one to get through the FAFSA. But when you start the CSS profile, you may want an entire bottle or a 6-pack. It's a lot more invasive. It asks way more questions. It just takes longer to complete. And I would say they're not necessarily trying to make it more user friendly. A couple things you need to know is there's about 200 colleges that require this application. We may have a link that we can put in that shows you
Yep,
which
I'll do
schools
that right
that
now.
is. It treats home equity as a liquid asset. Some schools treat it much more aggressively. Some schools less so. Mentioned that in my Stanford and Northwestern example. I've already talked about it being a lot more invasive. They just, if they're giving away more money, they want more proof to show there's a reason they should give it away. They treat divorced and separated families differently, meaning some schools will only count the custodial parent. Some schools will count both, and I think there's even a couple that if both parents have remarried, it may count all four, depending on exactly how they look at things. So it seems sometimes it feels punitive or vindictive, but they are giving out a lot of money, and you just need to understand the process that they go through. And finally, it will value a business or a farm or a ranch, different things differently. So they're looking for more sources of income, whether it's real estate, outside businesses, just different things to evaluate that. All right, and we're to critical mistakes. So these are the things we want to avoid. And this is the biggest one, and I'm shocked at how many people will not do this, is do not feel obligated to answer questions that you're not required to answer. And people just think because the question's there, it's going to force you to answer it. A couple years ago, there was always an asterisk if it was required. Now there's less. And what I would say is less is more. If they really want information and you leave something blank, they'll reach out to you and ask for it. So don't give it to them if you don't have to. Only answer the questions you're obligated to. Number two, Dan touched on this. Do not overvalue your primary residence if you're a homeowner. Obviously, find the lowest value you can to start with, and then take that IRS quick sale rule from there. We want to make sure that, look, if you have to sell your house, it's going to be incredibly painful and difficult. To do that, to pay for education in a timely manner. So don't overvalue your primary residence. Same thing, make sure 529s are in the parent's name with the student as the beneficiary. Do not count them as a student asset. It just inflates your EFC or SAI, by a significant amount, and it's hard to unwind it. Once they see something, they may try to help you change it, but it's not always the case. So start with the least amount, make sure it's accurate, and make them ask for more. There's a question that says, how much can you afford to pay for college each year? How you answer this question is never going to help you, but it can hurt you. You want to be honest and, true, but err on the side of caution. For my families that have students in private school here in Houston, I tell them never to put more than they're already paying for their private school. And in some cases, they can't even afford that because now they've got, a sibling coming into private school or whatever. So always err on the low side for you. Don't ever overestimate future year income earnings. You don't know what that's going to be. Even if you're expecting a raise, things change. Always err on your side, right? We want to set you up for success without being fraudulent. Until you've earned it, it's not yours. There's a section towards the end where it says, do you have any special circumstances? Again, don't put that information in at the time of application. Save it for after you've gotten your acceptance and your award letter. There's a saying that says they cannot unsee anything. And if you've told them that you had, medical expenses from COVID, or you lost a job, or you've got a divorce going on, they can say they've considered that in your award and don't need to consider it at the time of an appeal. If they don't know it, then at least they have to look at it when you do appeal. And finally, don't miss deadlines. Deadlines are paramount. They can mean the difference between real aid and missing out. So just make sure you're paying attention to those and getting things in on time.
Excellent. All right. So let's talk about some of the pros and cons of the changes that are coming to this FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid. And there are some good things, by the way, folks. First of all, there are going to be more resources for low-income families. Specifically, it's going to be easier to qualify for the Pell Grant. And for those of you that aren't familiar with the Pell Grant, it's a grant that is awarded by colleges. In other words, the money is provided to them to help low-income families or those with a financial need cover part of the cost of school. It can actually be, I think the number right now is over $7,200. And there's going to be maybe a little bit of a bump to that, which is fantastic to help out. Here's another great thing. They're dropping the number of questions from over 100 to 35, which is fantastic news. Also, child support in a divorce situation that was treated as an asset is, it's going to be treated, excuse me, as an asset, not as income moving forward, which is definitely a plus. And then also, most of the untaxed income is eliminated from the formula. Things like workman's comp, veteran benefits. Again, those contributions I mentioned to your 401k plans or 403bs and any other taxed income is going to be wiped out. It's no longer going to be added back to your income, which is a good thing. Now, there are some cons. And the biggest one that we really want you to be aware of is it's the elimination of the multiple children in college. In other words, it's called the multi-student discount. That no longer is going to be the case for the FAFSA, okay? That means if you've got two children in college at the same time, your student aid index, which is what they're calling the new calculation, will be the same per child. So for example, if you run the numbers and your SAI comes in at $20,000, in the past it would be split to about half, so 10,000 for one child, 10,000 for the other child. No longer moving forward. It's going to be 20,000 per child. And that's the stinger, folks. That one really hurts. The other
essentially
one is
doubles the cost of college for middle-class families. I mean, yeah, there's no way around it. It's a painful.
Yeah, it really, really is. And then this other one also is going to have an impact potentially, which again, it's dealing with divorced families where mom and dad are divorced or separated, legally separated, and not living in the same household together. It's going to be the parent who provides the most financial support to that child that's going to need to complete the FAFSA. As Chuck said, it's totally different what the CSS profile is to how they handle things. But the key is that it's going to be that particular parent. That parent's going to be the custodial parent. By the way, it has nothing to do with which parent takes the child as a dependent on their tax return. Has nothing to do with that. Every year that confuses families, because some families will bounce it from one parent to the other parent. So just keep that in mind. It's strictly based on the financial support. All right. So what can you do about this whole multi-student discount? Well, we'd like for you to get involved. College Aid Pro is really trying to push this agenda. We are trying to get people to actually get involved as far as making a difference. And in fact, one of the things I'm going to do here in the chat box is I'm going to put a petition in here that we have going. If we get it to 75,000 confirmed signatures, and we're getting there, we're at like 66,000 as I recall right now. But if we can get to that level, what's going to happen is we're going to take this to try to get Congress to change it. I mean, to really look at this through a microscope and figure out what they've done wrong that's going to impact so many families. So please, won't you help us do that? I mean, it's a great way to get involved as far as making a difference. Every family should care about this because I promise you it's going to impact so many families across the United States that have children, multiple children that are going to be in college at the same time. Okay.
I'm a Husker. I went to the University of Nebraska, and just this month, earlier in April, they're starting to push back to legislators in DC and the Department of Education, because not only are so many people in their state farmers and ranchers or business owners, they see that that's having an outsized effect, and there's no clear instruction on how to value a farm, or how do you sell a piece of your farm to fund education. It becomes very complex, and so that I think you'll see additional states jumping on that bandwagon soon. So I'm hopeful Texas will get involved.
Yeah. So, just help to further that opportunity. All right.
All right. So how to appeal for the best possible package. I didn't know this was a possibility earlier in my life. And I found out more about it over time. I think earlier in the slides, I mentioned that I encourage families to apply to between 10 and 15 schools. And I encourage families to make sure they're applying to schools that compete for students. So, Case Western was on our slide earlier. If you're going to apply to Case Western, a STEM school, and you have no interest of going to college in upstate New York, I'm still going to probably ask you to apply to Rensselaer Polytech, because they compete for the same type of students, and they give generous aid awards. When you get both those awards, you can see which one's bigger and see if you can leverage it to get a better deal from another school. You want to bring color and background to your story. If you've had a change in circumstances, whether that's medical expenses from COVID, a lost job, you're an immigrant family and you support a large extended family in El Salvador, you want to include that story. If there's a specific amount that's going to make the difference for you to go to a school, hey, if I can just get $5,000 more a year, I'm willing to come up with whatever the excess is that I need to come up with to attend there. Tell them that, hey, 5,000 is the amount I need, and if I get it, I'll sign on the line and enroll. Show the awards offered by other schools. I kind of touched on that. You'll get them in writing. You can send them right with your appeal letter. You want to challenge expenses that are not considered on taxes. There's a lot of those, especially if you're a business owner. They may go through your schedules, the AAC, look at the different things, whether it's real estate, and say, hey, we're not going to count these deductions, even though the IRS allows it. You can push back on that and say, why didn't you count them? And they do impact my income and ability to pay for school. And all this, again, goes into that very first bullet point. Build your story, make it compelling. We want to be persistent, right? You want to show that you want to go there. You want to, demonstrate interest and demonstrate that you understand the methods they use to calculate need. You want to make sure if you're asking for need that you send it to the right area, the Department of Financial Aid. If you're asking for more merit because your students' grades got better, or they retook the SAT and went from 1,300 to 1,600, you need to make sure that goes to the Office of Admissions for the merit-based scholarship. So there's a lot of things that go into this, and we'll do full presentations on appeals down the road, but those are important things that we want you to be aware of. The student can generally lead the charge. It's going to be a little bit different if it's a need-based appeal, because the parents are going to be supplying a lot of the financial information. But in general, the student can still drive that. And be persistent, be polite, make sure you're somebody the financial aid office wants to deal with for 4 years. If you're a jerk, it's real easy for them to give that extra money to the next person in line who is much nicer. So keep all those things in mind, and if you have questions, make sure you join our next webinar on how appeals work.
Yeah, Chuck, kind of the way I put that is be pleasantly persistent. The whole idea, there's nothing wrong with going back time after time after time to ask, until they finally give you a firm no. But the truth of the matter is, you're dealing with a piece of paper, meaning the FAFSA or the CSS profile that's been submitted, that can't tell your whole story. And so, like Chuck said, just bringing color and background to that is such a big deal. And don't forget, by the way, folks, it's a relationship between the student and the school that's coming here. Yes, mom and dad, you are participating and helping to pay for it if you can. But without a doubt, if you don't tell your story, they'll never know what's going on. So. All right. Well, listen, let's move into something that's important here. As I said at the beginning, we wanted to introduce you to the whole landing page that's been created for you. And so I'm going to go ahead and again, put this into our box here, into the chat box, so that you've got this. And I really want you all to click on this right now if you can, so that you've got the ability to take a look at it. I'm going to actually do that here. I'm going to try to anyway and see if it'll work for us here. But the idea is that we're trying to get you to go into this landing page and see what it looks like, so that you've got the ability then, here you go. You've got the ability to see what's going on here. So let's kind of walk you through this. It's pretty simple. We've got a nice little video demo here that'll walk you through the onboarding process. And just know this, it's going to ask you a series of questions right off the bat. It's going to ask, who are you? What's your relationship to the student? What's the student's first name? And then it's going to ask a number of questions about the student, and then also about the parents.
Are you trying to share that, Dan, or are you just telling them?
I'm just walking them through it.
Okay,
Yeah, first,
gotcha.
but yeah, we'll get there in a second. And then you can see, as it says here, Livingston High School is excited to team up with College Aid Pro to provide our students and their families with free access to their cutting-edge technology, MyCap, that demystifies financial aid and shows you how to get the most free money for school and make an informed college buying decision. Now, the key with this is you're going to use this very important coupon code, which is the Livingston 100. That's just for you. That's because you go to Livingston High School. Do not share it with anybody else. You just have to know that. And also, what you're going to do when you get into the system is it initially allows you to set up a free account. You're actually going to do an upgrade. And when you do the upgrade, it's going to allow you to create a Scholar account, which means that you'll have full access to the software for all the colleges on the database. And so again, we really want you to proactively do this. Okay, if I click on the free sign up button, you'll see what happens here. And it makes it pretty easy for you. All you've got to do is you follow these steps, create the account, select the plan, which is where you would do the Scholar, and then start saving on college. So from there, then every time you would come back to the same program, which is mycap.collegeaidpro.com, you'll be able to log in. But whatever you do, make sure that you use the landing page that we've shared with you to set up the account. Do not go to mycap.collegeaidpro.com to set it up, because again, we want to be able to help you. We want to be able to make sure that everything is working for you in your account. And the easiest way to do that is to set it up through your landing page. So that being said, let's show you what's going to happen here then. So give me just a second, because I've got to get into the program.
And while Dan's doing that, I'm just going to reiterate, like, what a great thing Livingston High School and Livingston ISD and Gear Up is doing for all these families. I mean, this tool can make the difference of, you know, thousands of dollars in what you pay for college. I'm not over exaggerating. You know, the more you use the free resources that CAP's providing to Gear Up, to learn more, the webinars, you know, Dan and I host bi-weekly office hours where people can ask questions as they go through this process. This, you know, as somebody who works as a financial advisor, this is huge because it can allow you to get your kid to and through college successfully and still allow you to focus on retirement and all those other things. So it's an incredible resource, and I just can't encourage you enough to take full advantage of it.
Yeah. So let me do this real quick here, Chuck. Thank you for that. I want to show you what the account will look like after you've input everything. So the program is going to allow you, you're going to have a profile up in the right-hand corner where all of your details have been put in. And then it's going to populate what your federal, institutional, right now, even your consensus, expected family contributions. The EFC here will be changing to your student aid index. But these are the numbers that the colleges are going to say, mom and dad, that you should be able to pay for college. And then it's also going to give you the chance to put in there what your college budget is. In other words, it's a great way for you as a family to have what we call the college money talk, you know, where you're really sitting down and you're working through these details. In addition to that, it's also going to give you the chance to search for schools. So you can see this blue button that's here. if I click on it, you could plug in schools. You can plug in whatever school you want to. If you wanted to plug in the University of Texas, okay? And let's just, put them in here. Then it'll show, a couple of things. It's going to show that sticker price. Remember, Chuck was talking about that earlier versus the net cost. Now, remember, this is my sample family, so, don't freak out about that. But all you do is you come over and you hit this add school and the advanced, and then it has put that into the dashboard. So if I go back to, on the left-hand side here, the dashboard, then you'll see that over here in our list, got to work my way over to it, is the University of Texas. I promise you it's in here.
Yeah, and remember, Dan's in Ohio, Kentucky area, not a Texas resident. So that's why you might think, hey, why does that sticker price seem so high for you Texans?
Yeah, I'm so glad you mentioned that, Chuck. Yeah, don't freak out about that price, folks. I promise you it's not that high, but for us out here, it is. But we're going to eventually walk you through even more details on this, because there's just a ton of great information in here when it comes to opportunities like, why is Santa Clara, that's an $82,000 per year school, coming in at less than University of Texas for us over here in Kentucky, Ohio area? It's because of need-based aid or because of merit aid, okay? And then there's other options. There's other fantastic tools that are in here. We also have an affordability tool that will break things down based on the 4-year numbers associated with a college. And so, just know that these tools are things that we're going to help you with, but we want to get you started with the baby steps. Baby step number 1 is to, again, go back to the landing page and get yourself set up on that landing page. And then to input all of your data points, which is your factual information, your academic details for the students, and then also the financial details for your family, so that you can get started with the initial things and then start to play around with shopping for some colleges. It's not going to hurt you if there are some schools that come to mind that are worth taking a look at, because then you just really unlock this incredible tool to help you out.
If you're a junior and just getting started with this, pick 20 schools. Just put in all 20 after you've completed your profile. Like Dan said, there's some questions, but really you should be able to knock that profile out in less than 5 minutes, and then throw in 20 schools, and you're going to have a good idea, hey, oh my goodness, the University of Nebraska is significantly cheaper than Texas A&M for my student. How come? It's an incredible tool.
Yeah. So let me do this. Let me go back to the PowerPoint page here. Oops, I got to make sure that I share that with you first. There we go. Oh, give me just a second here. Well, it looks like it's forcing me to go back to the beginning, but hang on just a minute for me. Technology, folks. Sometimes you got to work your way through it and get to the good stuff. So here's what we're going to do. The last piece of the puzzle. So again, you're going to click on this and get use the Livingston 100 coupon code, which gives you free access to the scholar level. We also want to share these final options for you as far as some great resources. First, did you know that we have a YouTube channel? That's right, we do. And so you can click on this particular link. It'll take you in to be able to see our YouTubes, which are recordings of all kinds of presentations that have been done already and saved. We also have a Facebook group, which we would love to have you join. Again, it's as easy as taking that link, clicking on it, and then joining that particular group. And then one thing that Chuck and I are a little proud of is that we also do the office hours. And that is every other Monday, where we get together and we are there to help you. We are there to answer questions. It's totally free. All of these resources are free, by the way, but it's the ability for you to hop online with us, ask questions of things that are going on, and or you can always send an email to support@collegeaidpro.com as well as you're working through this. So, as we said, our mission is to help end the student loan crisis by empowering families to shop smarter for college. This is your first step of this process. We're super excited that you are working through this with us. We want to be here as a resource to help you be successful with your next step into the future of college. And again, if you've got additional questions, please reach out to us at support@collegeaidpro.com. Chuck, any other final things that you want to say?
You know, we appreciate your time. Thank you for joining us. You know, if you thought it was valuable or something, you know, feel free to leave a review on our Google class. And again, I'm here in Texas, so feel free to, you know, reach out for me if you have questions about CAP, my CAP, stuff like that. And a couple questions just came through chat. We'll see if we can take a swing at real quick.
Yeah, go for it.
What is used to determine your income class status? I think so. It's adjusted gross income on your 1040 return, and it will be, you know, determined. I guess, you know, part of that is, are you married, filing jointly, you know, separated, different things like that. And then it says, does College Aid Pro website calculate this when you input your information to help you make decisions? Yeah, you're responsible for your income number. But we'll tell you where to find it or to source it from, which is what, line 11 on your 1040.
Right.
And you know, the better the information you have, the better the output is going to be. But if you don't have something exactly, you can kind of ballpark it to get started. But we would really, really encourage you to make sure it's, you know, accurate and that you're pulling it from the right source.
Yeah, just remember, folks, if you put junky numbers in at the top, you're going to get junky results at the bottom. So be very, very careful about that. Chuck is absolutely right on. You know, it's going to make such a huge difference for you. And I promise you, this tool will change the way that you look at the colleges. It'll help to give you the details that you need. So, all right. Well, Chuck, I think that's it. Folks, we thank you so much for joining us, and have yourselves a great rest of your day. Take care, everyone.
Likewise. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.